First question I have, do I call you Chef, Chef Michael, Mike? What do you like to be called?
I mean, I've been called pretty much everything before 10 today, so anything that you're comfortable with is fine. Chef, you can call me, all my friends call me Simon. You can call me Chef. You could call me Simon. You could call me Michael. I don't care.
I'll create a new nickname, Cy. No.
That was my grandfather's nickname, actually.
Well, there you go. Are you dialing in from New York? Because I know you were here for the New York City Wine and Food Festival.
Yeah, I was in New York. I'm currently in, we live in East Hampton, so I'm currently in East Hampton. Left the festival Saturday afternoon. I had my grandson's christening was yesterday, so I was in charge of food.
Wow. Were you able to work Diplomatico into the food festival appearance?
I didn't. I did a big dinner with Waxman on Thursday. We did a 6-courser, and then I hosted an event on Friday, which was 15 Mediterranean restaurants. I was just the host, and then I had a 30-minute pasta demonstration on Saturday. Got
it. The Hard to Run campaign with Diplomatico, how long did you have to keep it a secret that you'd be working on it before it got unveiled?
I don't think it was much of a secret. I've been with them now for a little over 2 years. It's been a great partnership. We have I don't do a lot of partnerships with brands because I feel like after damn near 40 years in the industry, I want to do things with people that we share similar viewpoints. And Diplomatico is just one of those places that lined up very well with how I feel about food and product and how it's handled, and that they do the sustainable thing so well, and it's family run, and it just, a lot of things just matched up very, very well. And I always love doing things too where I learn a lot during the process. So I've been like a whiskey bourbon guy for 30 years, and it's opened my eyes to a lot of great new flavors and combinations, which has been fun.
You're one of those chefs that's super hard to define, because chef is just like one of probably 9 job titles. I don't know if it's 9, but you say chef, restaurateur, best-selling author, keynote speaker, TV presenter. We can keep going with all that. What I wanted to know is, when in your career path you kind of knew that you wanted to be more than a person just in the kitchen?
I never did. I don't know what the hell happened. I just, I didn't look. It's interesting because I feel that TV and food has changed so much now. Mm-hmm. I started on Food Network. Food Network started in '95. I started in '98. I graduated from culinary school in '89. There was no. I went there to be a tradesman. Mm-hmm. There was no. Julia was cooking on television and Jacques, but there was no really such thing as a celebrity chef, so to speak. And in '98, I won Food and Wine Best New Chef, and Food Network was just getting going, and I was on Sarah Moulton's show. She had a show called Cooking Live, and she had me on as a guest because I won the award, and mm-hmm. I did it, and then I guess I did good. They asked me to do it again. I did it again. I did it again. Then they, back then Emerald Live hadn't started yet, and there was no Rachel Ray and Guy, and the network was all chefs back then. I co-hosted a show called The Melting Pot, mm-hmm. and we did that for several years, and it did well back then. But well back then was I used to always kid around. We're huge in prisons and nursing homes. We would get 1,000 viewers. We're like, yes, we're killing it, man. Yeah. I'd go into New York City. The studio back then was in Hell's Kitchen, and we would do 5 shows a day for 11 straight days, and that was the year. And it was all live to tape. You literally had to chop off a finger for it to stop. And then Emerald Live hit, and Emerald was on the network back then called Essence. Yeah. Bobby, and I don't even think Alton hadn't started yet. It was David Rosengarten, Ming Tsai, myself. And then it just kept growing. And, I mean, like someone asked me earlier, did you ever think you'd have more than one restaurant? I'm like, man, I was just thankful to have one restaurant. We were so excited when we opened our first one in 96 and it succeeded. And, it was little. And my wife, Liz, is a somm, and she ran the front and I ran the back. And, we had 20 employees. And I mean, some of them are still with us. And,
Yeah.
It was an awesome time. And I mean, we didn't open a second restaurant till 11 years after the first. So to me, it feels like it's been this really slow, steady growth. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people look at it and they think it's insanity. And I mean, it does get slightly crazy occasionally, but because we didn't really rush into anything or chase things, we just let them happen a little bit more organically. We were able to build a good foundation around us, and people that our key people have been with us forever, which truly is the secret. I mean, it's like, I don't care how good of a chef you are, if you don't surround yourself with people that are better or at least as good as you're not going to succeed.
Well said. One of the things you're talking about, how there really weren't celebrity chefs aside from Julia Child, handful of people that everyone knew. That was a focal point of a documentary called Supermensch about Shep Gordon. Did you ever see that?
Oh yeah, I was mentioned in it.
That's where I was going with that one.
Yeah,
so when did you start to notice the ascent of the celebrity chef? Was it like 2001?
Yeah, I would say that's what, I mean, I think to me, Emeril changed the way people think about celebrity chef forever. Like he
had a sitcom.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think Emeril was the breakthrough. It was like, he was the one that, I mean, certainly for Food Network, but I mean, just in general, I mean, I think people adored Julia and Jacques and some of those other shows, and it was more of a, Saturday, Sunday morning PBS, sit on your couch and learn how to cook. But Emeril was the first chef that I know of, or that I'm aware that broke into prime time, where it was like, I mean, he was a monster, and for us, for other chefs, it was interesting to watch because, our community is like big but small. So like, back in the early 2000s, we would all do dinners together for charity events and, share our strength and this and that and food banks. And so, there would always be these things where 15 or 20 or 30 of us would get together and do these charity events. And, Emeril was an amazing chef, or is an amazing chef. And like I had done a lot of things with him from the charity standpoint outside of television. And so to watch, to that point, like people, like even Julia, I don't think Julia, I was fortunate enough to work with Julia back in the day. And I don't even, Julia wouldn't have called herself a chef, so Emeril to me was like the first chef, like not entertainer, like chef, to make it into that world. And it just exploded. And then, it continued to grow after that. And then people started like, shows started growing where it was like maybe more talent than chef based, but still people that obviously could cook. But, and then you look at someone like Bobby, who has, was Emeril, and then it was, like but Bobby just was like slow and steady, and to me, he's probably the gold standard of what a television chef is. Like, he's always had great restaurants. He's won awards. He's mentored young cooks, not only in the restaurant, but in the television world. I'm a little biased because he's my best friend, but, but for the things that he's accomplished as a chef, TV host, and business person, I think are unmatched.
Yeah. When a chef's like passion project, almost throwaway restaurant is amazing, like the Bobby's Burger Palace, you know
Right.
that person is fantastic. But back to you here. Something I'm curious about is with chefs and music. A lot of chefs we find out were musicians or the diehard music people, but all everyone wants to talk about them with them is food. In your case, is music ever playing in the kitchen while you're focused on the food?
And constantly. We're a massive music family. My son was in bands his whole life, played on the Warped Tour for a hot second.
Really? What band?
He was in a band called the Radicals out of Cleveland.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, I remember when he was like in high school, getting ready to go to college, and he's like, "I'm opening up for the Ramon," the Ramon. I'm like, "Holy shit, am I old?" Or I'm opening up for the Buzzcocks. I'm like, "Oh my god, I saw the Buzzcocks when I was in high school." So we're a big music is huge in our family. I'm friends with a lot of musicians, a ton of musicians. I think our worlds collide. We both work weird hours, late nights,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Sammy Hagar has been a dear friend of mine for well over 20 years now. He just turned 75 the other day, actually. But we've cooked for a lot of people in the music industry and forged those friendships because I think our lifestyles are similar.
Is it okay that I'm writing a book about David Lee Roth and not Sammy Hagar right now?
Absolutely. I'm a Van Halen fan all the way through and through. As I always say, people go, Dave or Sam? I'm like, well, I'm friends with Sam, so there is that. But tell me which one had the bigger hits.
Yeah.
Sam, Dave is Dave. Dave's like, was arguably one of the great frontmen of all time. But I don't think anybody's going to say Dave had like this insanely good voice. He was just an amazing frontman. Sam has like a great rock voice.
Totally.
And still does.
And still does. I saw him in Vegas a couple of months ago. And was it a Sammy's Beach Bar Cocktails commercial, the concert? Yes, it was.
Yeah.
But still belting at it at a top level. So
yeah, he could still belt, man. Like we have a restaurant in the Palms, and we get a lot of the older bands come through, and who I obviously love to go see. But it amazes me how some of their voices have really. I mean, Billy Idol, who I wasn't like a giant fan of as a kid, but he had a residency at the Palms, and I went to see him a couple times. He could still go,
Not only can he still go, but his guitarist, Steve Stevens, was originally going to be David Lee Roth's lead guitarist in the band. So it all comes back to Van Halen.
He's sick, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic players. And back to you with two more questions, and then I let you go. And
all right.
First question I have is going back to this 9 job title. Maybe you have 12 job titles. Where you're at right now, are you content with that? Or is it one of those you ain't seen nothing yet? There's more to come out of this guy.
I'm never content. I mean, content's a bad word for me. I'm always, I should, because I always want to learn. Like I love seeing new things, learning new things, experiencing new things. I'm past the part of my life where I'm gonna when we open a new restaurant, I'm on the line 18 hours a day for a couple months, and I love that. Do I want to do that 7 days a week still?
No.
Physically, I just can't. I wish I could say that I could, but I can't. It's like when we opened Mabel's in Cleveland, it was like I would come home at night and I'd look at Liz and she'd be like, "I'm putting ice in the bathtub now. Like go, like my knees, my ankle, we're there because we're smoking 24 hours a day." There were days I'd sleep there. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like, I'm too old for this shit. But I still love it, and I never want to not do it. So, I mean, I want to continue to grow and do new things, and there's like the generation of chefs behind me, and then the generation of chefs behind them. I continue to be friends with those people, and I love cooking with them now too, because you see new things and experience new things. Just like I love cooking with one of my mentors, Jonathan Waxman, on Thursday. It's like the chef community is so strong, and I still love doing those things. Like I'm getting ready to put together a menu for South Beach Food and Wine, and doing it with another chef that they're going to announce it with, and I'm like, they're like, this menu is kind of aggressive, and I'm like, sometimes you got to remind everybody whose yard it is, like like
well said.
Like every once in a while, it's okay to flex, it's okay to say like, look, I'm old, I ain't dead, so, but I enjoy doing TV now because I think it's another way to teach. I enjoy doing the cookbooks. We're working on some fun products. So these partnerships that I've forged with like places like Diplomatico are really have become special to me. And again, it's fortunately I've been, and I do think a lot of it is luck. I've been lucky enough to be in the right spot in the right time several times throughout my career. And it's put me in a position now where I could pick the things that I want to do.
Sure.
And so that's what I'll continue to do while I can. I'm enjoying being a grandfather. I'm enjoying all those other things a lot. So trying to at 53 years old, I'm still searching for balance, and eventually I'll find it.
But you don't mean Balance by Van Halen?
No, I mean there's always balance in Van Halen.
And the last question I got for you before I let you go is, we've seen so many shows and movies that feature chefs in the kitchen. Naturally, there's so many inaccuracies related to all that. But what do you think is the greatest representation of what it's like to run a restaurant or work in a kitchen full time in a TV show or a movie? Is it The Bear?
I think The Bear has some good reality in it. And the reason that I say that is, like, when I watched it, I literally was getting like PTSD, which I think a lot of chefs were, like, the printer, like obviously that was a TV exaggeration.
Yeah.
But the feeling of that is very real. The restaurant that I met Liz in 1990, like, it was this tiny little fine dining restaurant that used to also do carry out, and we only had 3 people on the line, and you used to be able to hear the phone ring, and when you were getting too behind in the dining room, you could say go offline, but for literally, I mean, I worked there for 2 years. For 15 years in my sleep, I heard that phone ring, and like I was always like because the owner, it was like the owner said you could say go offline, but if you went offline, you were an asshole. So like you would try to keep it together. So I heard that phone for 15 years in my sleep. So, watching a show like Bear, I think brings a lot of that out. I think all of them have done a good job of, not all of them, a lot of them have done a good job of catching certain aspects, and then they exaggerated for TV or movie senses. I think Burnt, was a movie that kind of got panned, but when I watched Burnt, I'm like, you know what? They nailed a lot of this. A lot of this is very real. The pressure of working in those, 3-star restaurants, like for me when I was very young and a young cook, it was that intense. It was. I don't think it's quite like that now. The chefs that I worked for back then, like if they did the stuff that, the yelling and screaming and taunting and torture that they did to us back then, they'd be in prison, I think. But
Yeah.
I still think that intensity is there and the focus is there. But I think that the shows that and movies that have had success, they're leaning a little bit more back on that 70s and 80s kitchen than they are the current kitchen. I still think the pressures are there. I just don't think the abuse levels, I don't even know what you want to call it, are there anymore. But I loved Bear. I've talked to a lot of chefs. Some chefs loved it. Some chefs didn't like it. Some chefs were like, eh. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun watch. I thought, but Liz, my wife, who also has been in the restaurant business her whole life, she didn't like, she's just like, it's not realistic. They would never do that. I'm like, honey, it's a TV show. Like, it doesn't have to be completely realistic, but you do get the energy of it, you know.
I appreciate that answer and your time, and I'm looking forward to whatever is coming next. Thank you for speaking with me.
Thanks, man. Stay well. When
Likewise.
when does this Dave project come out?
I'm waiting on the manuscript notes right now. I'll have them in the next 2 weeks, hopefully early 2023, but out of my control.
Cannot wait to see it.
Paltrocast.